everybody, and welcome to our webinar, Modernize Communication with Microsoft Teams Phone. My name is Eleni Leppo, and I'm the Marketing Director here at Kite Technology. And also with me today is Adam Atwell, our Cloud Solutions Architect, and he's your presenter today. Adam and I are super excited to bring you today's session, and I know he has lots of really great content to show you about all the things that Microsoft Teams Phone has to offer. So for those of you that are joining us that may not be familiar with Kite Technology, we're a managed IT services firm, and we provide consulting as well to businesses across the United States. We work with organizations in many different industries, including independent insurance agencies, nonprofits. We have accounting and legal firms, healthcare practices, and lots of other service organizations and industries as well. I've listed some of the services that we offer here on the slide. So if you have any questions about that and would like to schedule a phone call, just send us a question through the pane and we'll reach out to you after the webinar. With that, I'm going to hand this over to Adam, and it's all yours, Adam. Take it away.
Thanks, Eleni. Appreciate it. Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here with us today. Just a brief intro. So I've been here with Kite Technology Group, our team, for almost 10 years. I must have the credit for the full decade. I will be official here in July. I've had the pleasure and honor really to help kind of lead the charge in certain areas of our business in our adoption, both internally with Microsoft 365, as well as externally towards things with our customers. So phones have been at the periphery of things we've been excited about for some time, and I'm excited about what Microsoft Teams has and sharing those details with you here today. So that's a little bit about me. Brief look at our agenda. It's up there on the screen for you. We have a lot of content to cover. I'm going to move kind of fast. I apologize for that. There's just a huge amount of value here that I'm going to try to get through in seeing the product and knowing kind of what those do's and do nots are of the system. Couple of other things that I'm going to challenge everyone to think about. One is that when you think about modernizing your workflow and really embracing the modern workplace, you really have to break the mold on the way you think about interacting with a phone system. You'll see that as a recurring, theme here throughout the presentation. So be challenged to think different. So one of the things I think that get lost in the world we live in, even pre-COVID, I felt this personally, is the actual connection with people. When we made the shift to a hybrid workforce at the beginning of the pandemic, and even prior to that, it felt really uncomfortable for me personally to not see people as much as I didn't, when I was head down, I didn't want to talk to people. I wanted to get my work done. I really enjoy being with people. And so I just want to kind of bring that front and center and say that, we matter as people and connecting in ways through audio and video with these tools we have in our modern world really matter. And that's one of the call outs that I just want to pause and scream to at the beginning of this, presentation. And so along those same lines, you want to think about the modern workplace, right? What modern communications look like. I mentioned hybrid and the change. We've probably heard all those things more times than we can count, but really the simple version of this is we need to think differently about how we're interacting with our technology today. Obviously, we're seeing that tangibly. We've felt the constraints of centrally managed infrastructure, whether it's servers or on-premise phone systems. But what we need to do now is embrace a strategy that gets us prepared for the evolving changes of the world ahead of us. And so that's really the foundation for how you think about a change to a modern communication platform. What is a modern communication platform? Well, it's really a combination of more than just audio, right? Rather than just audio, you're talking about video calls, meetings, chat. It's a combination of all of those things put together. Right? And so that's really a new mentality from the modern workplace, if you will, thinking about a communication system as a platform, not just for a single function. With that said, we're going to talk about Teams and kind of go through the components here and really cover, how it brings those things together. So you can see here the simple diagram. It shows the top layer with Teams, Microsoft Teams and Teams Phone as the PBX. And then down below is what we think of as the traditional dial tone. Now, Microsoft has a product you can just buy all in one. That's the Microsoft Teams Phone. That's part of a rebranding. About 5 or 6 different times they've done it. But that specific plan, Microsoft handles your dial tone, your calls. They get them to where they need to go. In addition to that, Microsoft also is working with 2 other ways of connecting folks into their Teams telephony product. One of them is Operator Connect and another is Direct Routing. Simply said, those 2 methods of connection get you connected to the Teams application and the other places where your voice or phone calls travel. Today, we're just going to be talking about the Microsoft first-party native Teams phone system, and we're not going to cover Operator Connect or Direct Routing. I just wanted to set that up front to set your mind. So let's talk about what really comes with the Microsoft Teams phone system today. You can see here there is a large number of features, and this features list keeps growing more and more and more and more. And I don't see Microsoft stopping at any point in time. Now, keep in mind that the Microsoft Teams phone system has a history, which I won't tell the whole story. We don't have that much time, but it wasn't built as a standalone phone system first in the way the traditional phone system was. It was really an add-on, if you will, and it's kind of morphed as needs have changed. But looking at this list, it's a pretty big list today. Let's talk a little bit about kind of what you get with the Microsoft Teams phone with calling plan. So for $15 per user per month, Microsoft will give you the cloud backend, if you will. The PBX is what we call it in traditional terms. And so you can do all the things that you've seen at auto attendant and transfers and call queues. You get 3,000 minutes per licensed user per month, and they get pulled within your organization. And then you get access to Microsoft Teams Teams Phone, wherever you're at, mobile, web, any of those kinds of things, anywhere you want to interact with it. There is one requirement above and beyond the $15, and it is that you have a plan that already includes Microsoft Teams. You can't buy the Microsoft Teams phone plan without another piece of the Microsoft ecosystem called Microsoft 365 and a Teams license baked into it. Also, please know that, as I mentioned earlier, Microsoft has a habit and a track record of rebranding. Whoever's making those decisions based on, the world and how we refer to things. And so know that this plan may change names again. I think it's pretty settled, but just saying that, calling it out. So one of the other pieces of cost, really, when you look at the Teams phone system, beyond the fixed per user cost, is really audio conferencing and calling plans. And so up above and beyond what you're paying for in the $15 per user per month, you have options to add other capabilities that add more cost to your monthly phone bill. One of those is the international calling plan. So when you're calling out internationally, you can add an international calling plan that will give you a bucket of minutes in certain countries, and there's a list on Microsoft's website, and you can go ahead and work through that if you have those needs. There's a nice lookup list. In the same way, you'll also notice that they have toll-free calling. Toll-free calling is not included in your buckets. That's always billed separately per minute. And so those are 2 pricing methods that you pull up and add, and they're on your tenant altogether. And from there, you're going to kind of pay for what you use. We like to kind of refer to it as a calling card, the way you used to go out, send your kids to the mall at the payphone. I used to have them, put it in your pocket, and call home when you're ready for the pickup. That's the way I describe things beyond domestic usage. Just a note on audio conferencing in general, Microsoft has changed the way they give you audio conferencing. There is a limit of how many minutes you get. That's a little bit of a sliding scale because it scales with the user licenses you have. But know that they're pretty much trying to give you audio conferencing for free because they want you to see the value of the integration with the other pieces of the Microsoft ecosystem. So if you have a Microsoft 365 plan, chances are there's already a audio conferencing capability waiting for you. Now, it may have to be turned on and configured in those kinds of things because they've changed the way it's deployed and built over time. But that's a little bit about costs above and beyond the monthly per user per month fee. One other graphic, if you will, this really kind of shows Microsoft's larger plan of where they're really building out calling plans, where they're at today. You can see the geographic centers, if you will. And so they're spreading, right, the calling plans, and this means for purchase in that area. The list of countries you can call into is all that have telephones. You just, again, pay per minute for the international or a bucket for the international minutes. That being said, I would expect this to continue to grow because they're doing rapid growth and provisioning. They're also starting to support things like E911, so it can know where you're at in real time or use your internet IP address to help track for emergencies and those kinds of things. Now we're going to jump into the feature set, and I have a lot of slides here that we have, inside of the demo. So I'm going to just go through and kind of go through them pretty fast. I want you to know that because there's a lot, but just in general here, take a quick look at the way Teams presents itself, specifically from the telephone side for the user's mobile device and the user's desktop. You can see kind of this is already a huge difference in the way you interacted with your telephone system if it was a traditional system yesterday. And so that's just a graphic there. Taking another look, Microsoft really tries to build the user interface out to make it simple and intuitive for users to experience. I want to call it does require that you actually retrain your brain and workflows as you go through it. And so you see some things here that are very familiar with you, a dial pad, some forwarding, and names for missed calls, those kinds of things. Just more specifically, here's what Microsoft has, as from a layout perspective, in terms of the way they've built out, their menus. And so you can see here your phone numbers displayed down at the bottom. You have the dial pad, the menu, of course, for the calling functionality, and that doubles for internal calls as well. Your contacts, your voicemail, and then of course your speed dial. Right? So just kind of a basics in terms of the calling features. Taking and holding, receiving calls. You can see the list here. This is just kind of what they say is the core feature set, right? And most of this stuff is available across where you can access the Teams application, but the experience for using it is much richer from the Teams application itself. Let's take a look at kind of what that putting a call on hold workflow looks like. You can see here the user got the call and they're going to just go ahead and hit up on the triple dots, put the call on hold, wait a few seconds, and then they're going to go ahead and take them off hold. So you can see it's pretty easy from a point and click perspective, and then off you go. Looking a little bit further at the voicemail, right? This is how voicemail looks from the Teams system. That voicemail in the back end is stored in the user's Microsoft Exchange or email box in a place where only the user can get to. but you can see here it does transcription. You can play that. You also can choose to receive the audio copy or not. So that's a little bit about the voicemail. Call transfer is one of those things that often comes up as a kind of a pain point, I would say, about this system, because it's a little bit of a different method. Microsoft has designed the call transfer into blind transfer or consultative. And so let me show you what the consultative looks like first. And you can see here, you hit the triple dots. After that, you say consult, then transfer. You type the person's name. After you've typed their name, you can chat with them. You send them a message. They're going to kind of know before they get that call and it rings through, hey, there's somebody on the phone for you. So again, this is a different workflow experience from what you're used to. The traditional phone system would be something along the lines of call the person, they'd pick up, and then you could tell them, I'm passing something through to you. And then you can see, boom, the call gets transferred. So that's what a consultative looks like. In terms of what a blind transfer looks like, this is something you've probably seen before. You could imagine the call will come in. Of course, there it is. They pick it up. And after they pick it up, they'll go ahead and take it and they're just going to transfer it. Similar to the consultative, they'll find the person inside the system and go ahead and send the call off. Let's talk a little bit about what the history looks like. So the history here is something that you really have to start to really notice how the history is built. You can filter it out based on the typical things you see on your phone, your cell phone and those kinds of things. You see the filters up there. But one of the things you kind of have to pay attention to is whether that was an internal call, right? Me just calling my colleague, or was it an external call? And so you get used to seeing the caller ID and the folks' names as you go through the history. One of the other features that Microsoft has utilized is the device switching. And so if you've experienced this, it's a pretty seamless handoff. If you want to move from one device to another, you can go ahead and change whatever your speakers are and your headset is just with a couple of clicks. And of course, some different manufacturers make that easier with their certified, hardware and physical buttons, those kinds of things. So looking on a little bit more, you can see here that you can actually convert a chat into a call at any point in time. You'll notice the phone button up in the top right-hand corner of the Teams window, and just go ahead and, hit that call button. Do you have time for a call? Yeah, sure, of course. So we'll go ahead and make that call, and then it'll just go right in line with the chat there. You can also add people to the call, right? And so let's say that we get on the phone and you want to go ahead and add a participant to a call. Sometimes folks may want to add an external party or an internal party. And so after you're on the line, it's the same kind of experience like you see in a Teams meeting. You hit the participants button, and once you have the voice license for Microsoft Teams phone, you could then just dial a number and call them in, or call in one of your colleagues that's on Teams audio. In addition to that, Microsoft continues to build out the call forwarding or simultaneous ring groups. Initially, when they did the implementation for some of the forwarding things, they really put it tucked away in the back end. So it became a little bit inconvenient to configure things. They've since started to really build out the kinds of changes that you need to do quickly inside of the Microsoft Teams client. And so you can see here, you can go ahead and make the changes to the forwarding, or you could go ahead and make some live changes on the call group and its behavior there, and then even operate the ring order. Of course, if you want to tightly control this, you have that option too, or you have the ability to, inside these different call queues and ring groups, to define whether they can make changes on the fly or not themselves. So there's also forwarding to a group. right? And you can see kind of the layout here of the flow for calls for yourself. If I'm not available, ring someone else. If unanswered, go to voicemail or send it to another group, whoever that may be, one of the members of the team. So setting the call controls is something that really requires some getting used to and just exploration here. Once you kind of go through it, you get a sense of the same kinds of things you've seen, right? The devices tell you about your default cameras and those kinds of things. But this calls button really is the user's mailbox, the user's voicemail, those greetings, they all live inside of that calls area. And so that's where things are controlled from an end user standpoint. So let's jump ahead and talk about kind of the other ways that, Microsoft Teams, what these other features look like today. So this is an example of what extension dialing looks like internally. Now your extensions need to be set up for this to work, obviously, but you could see there with a 4-digit extension, it's just calling, the person that's right there in your organization. And so that's what extension dialing looks like. That gets set up in the back end and maintained there. There you go, extension dialing. We also have the ability to add a person that's on a traditional public switch telephone network is what that acronym means for anybody who was wondering. But really, I kind of consider it as a traditional dial tone. And so you can also have somebody in the office, on the call with you, and then just type that person's, phone number in real time. So that's pretty awesome. You can also see here in this animation what it looks like to actually receive a call when you're in, a forward or a group, and it shows you that little icon right there on your Teams window. And that's kind of what group call pickup looks like. We also have Teams parking. This is a common thing. We would call it hold, to put it on hold. So there really isn't a hold per se. The physical telephones, you definitely extend the hold traditional functionality here. But the way it works for Microsoft is if you want to put a call on what we might say hold, like a switchboard, it generates a part code. That code needs to be given on the other end where the user picks it up. And so that's what it means to go ahead and do that. And you can see there's the call, it's parked, and then the user would need the part code to actually pick it up to know what it is. Here's the other end of the park retrieve. So you can see from the calls panel, you'll see a button here pop up. And of course, we're getting the message, hey, park 10 is where it's at. Click the button, you'll see over here, parked calls, and you just type 10, and then you pick it up. So that's a little bit about the park. Talking about what a shared line looks like, this is similar to a call group. You can see that if you're actually receiving a call on behalf of someone, so maybe you're an assistant or an administrative capacity, and you might be answering a call on behalf of someone, that's kind of what that looks like. And so it would show up and say, call for Joshua in this case, and you can, pick it up. In addition to that, delegation is a similar capacity, but slightly different. A person can choose to have a delegate for answering calls on their behalf. And that's really one of those things that can be configured in the back end or, made a decision about live, on the fly. And so that's kind of the way the delegate works. You can see there, it's already, applied there. Talking about delegation, on behalf of another user. So you could go ahead and see Alex is going to call over to Adele. Once, that call is made, then you can see if you're a delegate, you already have that little button there where you can, get ready to pass that call off and transfer it. So that's kind of a little bit with the delegation. The delegation setting is something that you have to have a permission structure in place for, obviously in a workflow, but this is kind of where you manage the delegate options inside of the Teams client itself. And then similarly, in addition to those choices of make, receive, and change, you can also come over here and see, what changing call, really changing the call control for another user looks like from the Teams native client as well. And so you'll go here and click into the delegates, and there you go. And then, make those changes under that you've already set those choices. What do we want it to do? So let's go over a few examples on what kind of the Teams mobile experience looks like. So because this app was built, for Windows first, Windows then Mac, and then it extended to mobile in short order, the mobile experience you'll see, and it will feel very, very similar, right? You can see here's a call. You'll notice it actually says Microsoft Teams audio. And so that's a really important call out. You're seeing it say Microsoft Teams audio, so it's coming from the business phone system, which is great. In addition to that, of course, you're going to make a call. You're going to need the dial pad, right? So you have to find where that is. Well, because you only have so much screen space, they put this nice little button here that allow you to interact with the dial pad. And so this appears to be an Android phone. I'm not an expert on the Android system, but there you go. And you can see there's what the kind of delegate functionality looks like there. And so let's go ahead and see what the mobile experience looks like to kind of add folks to a call. Again, you see your people icon or person's icon, search for the people. In this case, we're going to go ahead and actually do a telephone number, and then they'll come right into the call. You can also look up folks inside of your organization's directory. So if you actually have a shared global address list beyond your users, your direct employees and staff, you can actually kind of have those contacts added here. Now, of course, there's some management and intention you got to put behind thinking about how to design those contacts, because they can be a lot to manage. But that's what that looks like if you want to share a common directory for vendors or other relationships you have. In addition to that, you can also take a chat that you have going on in the same way on the desktop and go ahead and turn it right on into a call that simply. So the other experience, of course, from the desktop is, if you want to go ahead and make that call on behalf of someone else. So if you are a delegate, you can go ahead and make that call that easily. All right, hardware and integrations. We've covered a lot really fast. Sorry, I didn't pause for all the animations that come through. But a lot of times folks will say the questions of, well, hey, Microsoft Teams is really cool, but I really like that physical phone system. I'm comfortable with the physical phone system, or they have other needs of things that they're used to, like a receptionist console. And so I just want to pause here and say why, while Microsoft Teams is a great platform in itself, and Microsoft Teams Phone is an even better extension, for sure, there are limits. And back to an earlier statement, we really have to change the way we think and interact with technology to really make and take advantage of the benefits in how it's designed. So here are the things that we see that folks have asked our customers and others, in the marketplace are saying, hey, I really want more than what we see here, right? And so you can see advanced call reporting is the top of the list. And so folks want to know the details of how long was someone on a call, how many calls were picked up, missed, all those kinds of analytics are buried in the back end in a really techie way to pull out. And so there's no easy way to pull that stuff out. And so, of course, that's not native yet. Another one is call recording. Now, for a while, this didn't exist at all other than a thought. Now, Microsoft has recently started to roll out the ability to record a call in the same way that you would record a meeting. And when you do that, you have privacy and security in mind. It actually can do the announce, this call is being recorded for you, so you don't have to say it every time. In addition to that, I kind of alluded to these things earlier of live call status or queue view with dashboard. How many calls do we have on hold? None of that exists natively today at all in this system. The receptionist console is a common thing that folks ask for, right? And that isn't there either. So if you're really used to a traditional receptionist where you can see status, you're not going to see that without, the Teams application is going to be the best and richest experience to see those things. The last one, of course, is SMS or text messaging. So folks all the time are asking the questions, when text, when text, when text. Well, it's so difficult to integrate in the back end. There's evidence of it, but it's what I would say probably a long way off. These are things that really make or break a decision for whether Teams is right for your organization. And so when you think about that, you really want to carefully understand how your team interacts with the telephone system and what other features. We didn't even mention kind of the old legacy traditional telephone system hooks, if you will. But I'm going to kind of cover that a little bit. We did talk a little bit about the things that aren't there today, if you will, right? And so here, I want to just show you this graphic because it shows you what is beyond the native product. And so you can see here, we've been talking about Microsoft Teams Phone, of course, the Microsoft calling plans. In addition to that, those operator calling plans for Operator Connect and direct routing. Those are things that allow you to connect the Teams benefits, the Teams PBX, if you will, the Teams backend right there on the application side to other services, whether it's an on-prem phone system or cloud-based connection to a phone system through direct routing, or Operator Connect, which is really how the call transfer makes it to wherever it's going, carrier side, right? You're going to see Microsoft continue to develop relationships and roll these things out. In addition to other options for, how to connect and integrate with traditional phone systems, you see on the right-hand side, the partners and integrations list. And that's a pretty big one, right? So partners and integrations in themselves, there's, you have integrators, right? The integrators and MSPs, we fall into that category of MSPs. We're going to help folks get connected and use this product, right? ISV integrators and APIs, those are folks that do really cool techie things in the back end, fancy features like to extend that text message capability through a third-party application. Of course, there's the operators. Those are the folks who are actually getting the calls out into the world. And then, of course, OEMs and others. The one thing that we're going to take a brief dive for, and I'm going to share my other screen, is just to talk for a moment about how to think about really the hardware certification or how to select the hardware that is compatible with Teams and ready to use. We're also going to talk about kind of a mentality on what to think about when you're considering, do I purchase phone devices? Before I bring this up, I just want to call out, we currently utilize 3CX as our back-end telephone system for our help desk and our staff. And a few of us definitely use Teams that aren't a part of answering calls in a call center like capacity. We know that one thing can't be all. And so we're going to continue to recognize a hybrid approach to serving the needs as they continuously change. And so we're really excited about how that's all coming about. So I'm going to go ahead and share my browser now. And what we're going to do is go ahead and review specifically the couple of things we talked about. One of which is, here's what you get with the Microsoft Teams phone system. These links we'll make sure we provide in the follow-up, but you can see here, this is Microsoft's technical article, and this is live updated pretty accurately as to what the features are. right? You can see here, this is where we go to find the answers of, hey, what did Microsoft add today to that base phone package? And so these are all the actual what's included. The second thing that I want to point out is the Teams enabled devices. And so Microsoft's changed the way that this website works a little bit. And they've even started to brand the back end of Teams Admin Center so you can purchase from there. But just taking a look here, you can see we have lots of different device categories, the gamut of them: headsets, speakerphones, desk phones, Teams displays, Teams rooms, monitors, webcams, room systems. This stuff has a wide variety of cost and use cases associated with them. But you can pretty much bet that if you find it here, it's already certified by Microsoft and the creator, the manufacturer, or on the way there very soon, like in, almost one more step, kind of, if you will, for the certification. And I'm going to point out one other technical article for anyone who's technical in the room. You can see here, this is actually, the certified back end, if you will. And so from here, you're seeing what Teams phones are certified for use within, the Microsoft Teams system. So the manufacturers and Microsoft get together and they go through a rigorous certification process. All right, we're going to go ahead on back to the presentation. There we go. So let's stop and talk about what our next steps really look like. A lot of folks are saying, wow, this is really cool and that looks really great, but what do we do? How do we think about this decision next? Well, the first thing I want to do is just kind of pause and bring up, if you would, what a typical project that we've done, what we see inside of the steps, right? The first step, and I should have made this bold, is capture requirements. So it's really easy to miss something as simple as a feature or a function that you take for granted day to day when making a change between a system that's traditional based to a modern platform like this. And so I would recommend getting help or taking a really slow approach to capturing requirements properly. Not only can you see that there's a huge change that goes into the process, but you also want to think about, as you're considering this, not just the change, but what things you can't do the same anymore. And maybe you're going to have to create a whole new workflow. And so that capturing those requirements and seeing those from day one is really important before making that jump. These are the other things that we do, and they're very traditional phone system in their nature, but they're extended to the Microsoft Teams ecosystem. So that's a little bit. There's a couple other things I'll call out. We as a company have been so blessed to be able to really ride the wave. I'm kind of saying this and chuckling because we've been on the bleeding edge of pushing the capabilities of Microsoft's cloud platform, right? In terms of Microsoft 365. And we're just so excited about the ways the world is changing and technology's helping that change happen successfully, connecting people, getting business done, helping people across, all the barriers that have been what we're used to. So these are just pieces of how we can help and typical things that we consider, projects that we help folks with along the way. So we're going to go ahead now and shift to questions. I know we've had a few in the chat, and I want to call out one that I fumbled on my words. I was kind of excited at the beginning of the presentation, trying to settle myself down. I have coffee over here. Shout out to Captain America. I'm probably going to get sued for that, but here we go. So I made a fun joke earlier about Zoom. And what I was really trying to say in that moment was, hey, we're not using Teams for our webinars. And the reason why is because it's just not there yet, guys. They're doing things in the back end, but they don't meet the needs that we have. And so I wanted to make that clear when in coming back to it, because I know I didn't address that properly earlier.
All right. Thanks, Adam.
Thanks.
Great presentation. Definitely a lot of info. And some of the questions are things that you may have covered already, but I think everyone would benefit from repeating these questions. So,
Sure.
all right, we have a great question from Jessica. Can communication credits be added on a per user basis?
So that functionality does not exist today that I am aware of. The communication credits are pooled at the organization level, and you actually have to prepay them. And so you can set up an auto charge with a credit card, but based on how they have it configured in the rest of the pieces of the Microsoft billing infrastructure, I would venture to say that they're probably going to be shared or pooled for a long time.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have a question from Garrett. Is it compatible with all phones, or would our office need to purchase Microsoft phones?
Great question. And this is one that comes up because a lot of folks, when they're considering this shift, not only the change do they consider, but the capital investment, right? It costs money to buy hardware. And so to answer that question directly, the only way you're going to get a physical telephone to natively work with the Microsoft Teams phone product is if it's a Teams phone. You shouldn't count on it working unless it's a Teams phone. There is that layer between I mentioned earlier where you can do direct routing with another phone system that may extend the life of your existing handsets or give you the ability to avoid that capital investment up front, but that has higher complexity and costs associated with it. You can pretty much use any smartphone, guys, and or any desktop computer. And I didn't mention it here, but you can also do this in a browser, right? So long as you have a microphone input in some way, you can even do it there.
All right, awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
We have a question here from Martin. Does Microsoft Teams, which you just covered, calling work on mobile phones, tablets, etc.?
Yes, basically anything that has a software OS on it that's modern. No, there's no support for Windows Phone that I know of. If for some reason someone has that, a Palm Pilot, a Nokia, I'm making some tech jokes here. Hopefully they're not lost on the crowd, but yes, any modern mobile OS, Android and iOS, keep in mind that Microsoft has a rigorous support life cycle when it comes to software and hardware. And so they're going to tell you, hey, for the best experience, you want to keep up on the two latest versions is a good rule in terms of your operating systems. That's a general good rule. When you hit that third layer, you start to lose some of the newer features or you see some performance impacts typically.
Okay. What about fax capability? Is that in beta? That's another question we have.
Fax capability is not a part of the native Microsoft Teams phone platform. The only way to extend fax capability that I've seen to date is by way of a direct routing solution that integrates it.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about, have you implemented a Ring Central PBX into Teams?
That's a great question. So I have not, but I'm familiar with it, and I don't want to play favorites here because that's not fair. I'm working on that between my two little ones. At the end of the day, a lot of the large traditional cloud-based phone providers that are in the marketplace, similar to the Ring Centrals of the world, they're seeing the marketplace shift and want to integrate with Teams. Here's what you need to know. Regardless of what platform you go with, if you want to bring voice into Teams, but you need more than what's there, you're going to have to pay a fee to get that connection in there. It's going to be a higher cost. At the end of the day, once you're making that connection, you will see those features extend down to your handsets, right? You can get to the conference room and those kinds of things. Almost all of the direct routing solutions out there have similar limits, though, in terms of what you can do with them. And so that, and then some slightly vary. So that's just a word on the Ring Central.
All right, awesome. Lots of awesome questions coming in. So, all right, can you repeat who in your organization uses 3CX and the call center type users?
Yes, for sure. Great. This is such a great question. And I'll tell you a little personal note here, since we're on live mic mode, which is great for me. We've had this internal struggle of telephone systems for years inside. And I say that I'm thinking back pre-COVID, we went through a couple of different phone systems to kind of make that jump from the analog phone, the end of the digital phone, and then VoIP. VoIP was kind of that jump to, oh, I know internet exists. So we have been using the 3CX telephone system for our live help desk calling for, I'm going to get this wrong, probably 4 or 5 years almost now. I've kind of lost track of time. We love it, and it does an awesome job of helping us stay on track with serving our clients and, you know, kind of analyzing that call flow. And so in our organization, our help desk and technical team really use that 3CX platform. And then we have some folks like me. I'm one of the, you know, what somebody would say, he's like a sales guy. You're like a sales guy. You're going rogue, right? I don't know if you guys have rogue sales guys in your organization. But I've been using Teams for a very long time, and the professional services team or our projects team, they have Teams telephone numbers. And we've kind of had this separate borders, if you will, for a while. We're gearing up for that integration with one telephone system, but it would be 3CX in the back end and extending that functionality to the Teams application. And so what I would expect is, as our needs change, we'll continue to flex and utilize 3CX and Teams together.
Great, thanks, Adam.
Yeah.
Great, another question from Jessica. Does the Teams phone offer a centralized admin center for configuring across an entire organization?
Yeah, that's a great question. And similar to the receptionist functionality, you know, there's lots of things that look different in the Teams phone system. So there is a Teams admin center in the back end. I didn't cover that today because it's built for technical sides of the organization, right? The IT pros, the folks like us, all the kinds of things that are non-technical really are surfacing inside the Teams client, call groups and those kinds of things. But yes, the admin center exists. It has a little bit of those like metrics and call reporting, just basic usage analytics. And it's also where you can go and configure what they call policies. So standard kinds of things, you want all things to be the same. And one great example of a common policy is a caller ID policy. So let's say that every single person in your organization has a Teams phone license. They all have a special direct dial phone number that's unique. But when they call out, you want to make sure your caller ID shows one number. Those kinds of things get configured in the Teams admin center.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm not sure that you can speak to this, but Adam had asked about a comparison between Zoom phone versus Teams phone.
Sure, I can actually speak to it a little bit.
Right.
And we actually had a client, I'm not going to call them out by name, but a client that's near and dear to my heart. And they were on an implementation, and they were considering, you know, jumping to the Zoom platform alongside of Teams. And Teams phone was in its infancy at the time. What we saw is that the Zoom platform is really great. Obviously, it's a really big product. It's grown just like Teams has. For us, we find that almost all of our businesses, in fact, basically all of them, are in Microsoft Cloud ecosystem. And so we just find that being inside of a single application where you're managing identities in one place, security in one place, it serves the organization as a whole across. The experience for the Zoom phone is very comparable. And there are other players out there, I'll call out Google Voice, comparable product as well. But the question becomes, how much complexity do I want to add and support to the organization's day-to-day operations? And so those are decisions to consider, but good product if you're looking for a standalone, for sure.
All right, thank you. All right, and this is from Garrett. Would our team need to use headphones all day as our office does not have smartphones for each user?
Great question. I'm really glad, Garrett, that you asked that question, because a lot of folks really, back before COVID, they'd say, but this is my personal device. I don't want to answer, the calls there. And so what I'll tell you is that the modern concepts of what you do from a personal device kind of look like this. The employee, based on your internal policies, maybe you want to say, hey, we're going to give you a fixed amount of a one-time fee to outfit you with AirPods, Plantronics headset, whatever it is, pay that one-time cost for the employee, and then they have the choice and they can interact with the phone system that way. You're not tied to a headset. You can use a physical phone. I'm using a microphone right now, right? And your webcams have them. They're not great from audio quality, but the choices are really endless. So you can do that, and the organization can choose to provide a physical phone, or a simple headset would get the job done from a phone perspective.
All right, awesome. I'm loving all these questions. All right, this one's from Emily. To clarify, the mobile app will work with cellular data in the case that wireless isn't available?
Yes, that's correct. The data is data, oversimplification there. But yes, the way it works from a mobile device is it'll take whatever path is available. So if you're on your Wi-Fi, it'll take that path. And really your actual device makes the decision itself as to which path it's going out. That's not a team's decision. And so yes, it'll go over Wi-Fi. Yes, it'll go over cellular. You will notice similar kinds of things with audio as you're traveling on the road, right? Raise your hands if you think you can work while you drive. This guy does, right? And then you get on a call and you cross a state line and you realize there's not a call tower between you, right? So be prepared for those transformer-like sounds as your calls go through, gaps in service areas on cellular. But yes, for sure, you can do it native on cellular or Wi-Fi.
All right, awesome. All right, this question is, for an out-of-the-box deployment, would you typically recommend headsets instead of desk phones?
Wow, I don't know who asked that question, Tom. Whoever that guy is, way to rub it in there, Tom. Seriously, this is one of those questions that you just can't answer for an organization. Similar to, do we buy desktop PCs or laptops? Well, I'm going to tell you guys, there is no free answer to that question. At the end of the day, what it takes is intentional thought at the leadership level about the way your team needs to operate and the flexibility you want to give them. And really not just that, but from a capital expense standpoint, managing that cost over time, right? You can't just say, yeah, we'll do it. We'll just buy whatever we want. You really got to plan those pieces out from a budget and strategic picture as well.
All right, great. Can we keep the same phone number? I know that's a great question.
That is a great question. And so the answer is yes, you can. You can port, it's called port your telephone number in from your existing carrier right on in. You can even port toll-free numbers, of course. Caution, the porting process timeline varies per carrier, right? And so sometimes that's a slow or a long process. I think 30 days is the furthest out you can schedule, a porting to start. So if I wanted to, say, plan a phone system implementation for June, today I could say do the cutover June 19th, right? And that's 30 days out. That's as far in advance as Microsoft will allow you to plan a cutover today.
All right. From Emily, if you're joining two parties together on the phone and want to leave the call, is that possible without dropping the call for the two that you've joined?
That is a really great question. And so unfortunately, the way calls work right now is it will actually drop the call unless the person is on, unless the other person on the call is a part of the internal team structure, then it'll hold on to the telephone side call. But if you do hang up and you originated the call, it will end if the parties are external.
Okay. All right, and another one from Emily. Do you think that SMS and MMS capabilities are coming, For example, if a client needs you to text a photo?
Sure. Yeah, great question. I'm going to kind of poke a little bit of salt into the wound here and just say texting is a bad idea for business communication. Now, everybody has an opinion of that, but in all seriousness, one of the things that has to be carefully weighed in every organization is the responsibility to regulatory laws and security. And when you jump over a different platform that's not certified for business use, you need to know that you're jumping to a safe place. That being said, SMS and MMS in particular are two kinds of technologies that really have a lot of other requirements for the handoff. And so it's kind of really hard to get, delivery confirmation, if you will, when you get that signature and you get that package, a physical package when you're using SMS and MMS. So I don't see them tackling that anytime soon from a perspective of allowing it in the system. And personally, I think they're going to kind of err on the side of caution when it comes to being safe and secure, because you can't control end to end what happens there. That's text messaging.
All right. Thank you. And we just made it through all our questions with 2 minutes to go. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We hope that the presentation today was valuable to you. And I know Adam provided such great information. So hopefully you now have a better idea of everything you can and can't do with Microsoft Teams Phone. The Kite Tech team is here to help. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to set up a follow-up call and discuss your specific company's needs. As I mentioned earlier, we will be sharing the presentation, the recording in a follow-up email, and that will go out on Monday, so be on the lookout for that. And please do remember to just complete the survey and give us some feedback. It really does help us build the quality of our presentations, so we appreciate that. Take care now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.